Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power.
Hello, welcome to this episode of Your Ultimate Life, the podcast and show committed to just one thing, helping you create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy that you can create with your own gifts, talents, and your life experience. I'm excited today to have Esther as my special guest. Esther, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, good. I'm stoked to have you. And we were chatting just ahead of time a little bit about the number of different ways that we can describe this awakening that's happening in the world, where
Yes.
people more and more are having this feeling that there's something more and we better get busy and figure it out and live into it.
Yes. Yes. It's such an exciting time to be alive. And I am so grateful that I'm here and I get to experience this awesome movement that's happening, this awakening, this transformation, this evolution of mankind.
I love it. Call to arms, call to coolness, call to do something, right? So I
Yes.
want to ask you a question. I love starting with this question because it's unexpected, and I don't want you to be modest in any particular way. But if I ask you this, tell me how, and tell our guests or our listeners, how is Esther adding good to the world?
First of all, how I live and how I show up in the world. Second of all, is my main purpose, and the only reason that I believe that I'm still here in this physical body is to help as many light beings awaken because there's so many here and they're getting the call, but they're not sure. And so I've had quite a few just show up on my Zoom or show up in my life. And I think that that's my purpose. That's why I'm here. That's how I'm adding good. Um, like I said, it's such an amazing time to be here. And there is a call for those of us that are beginning to evolve, to commit to bringing as many along with us. So
So
that's
I'm going to dive into that just a little bit more. I love it. Two parts to the answer. One was, and I use the phrase adding good because, we breathe, so we add carbon dioxide, right? And if we walk around angry, then we add anger. If we walk around staring at the ground, then we add isolation. And, we actually add something to the world with every breath. And so the first thing you said is how I'm being, how I show up in the world. Tell me more about that because I want people to understand
it's
the impact that they have, period.
yes, yes. I'm glad you went back to that because so many of us live unconsciously. We speak unconsciously, we think unconsciously. And so we're creating things and we're not conscious that we're creating. Our words are our creative faculty. The thoughts we have, we've lost so much, so many of us have lost the ability to imagine. And that's the greatest creative. It's like the ignition to creating things. So to me, I am conscious. I listen, I think before I speak, I pay attention to what's happening around me, how I react to it. Because it's not what's happening to you, it's how you're reacting to it. And so when I say how I show up, how I'm being, it's not about doing. And we've coming from that era of doing. We got to make this happen. We got to make that allowing, showing up and allowing the universe to show you the path. And you might say, how? When you become conscious and you ask, the universe will show you. It's like you've got to put your order in, and that's the asking. If you go to a restaurant and sit down, that food is not going to magically show up on your table. You got to put your order in, right? And
Yeah.
then you ain't going to get up and go tell the chef how to fix it. You're going to allow the chef to do what it does. It's the same thing with the universe. It's waiting for you to put the order in and then allow it to bring to you what it is you desire.
Something
So,
that's, go ahead. I'm sorry, finish up.
so words are words, what we say, how we say it, what is the intent behind what we say. All of those things come into play when we show up.
So
It
I'm thinking,
dictates what we create.
yeah, in the restaurant example. So if that waiter comes to take my order and the way I show up is I'm angry and I tell him, "Don't you dare," and I say, "Don't burn my stuff. Do this, do that," and I show up in the restaurant giving my order that way. And the waiter goes back to the chef and says, "Burn this one," because I showed up that way or I insulted them either in my manner
Yes,
or my language or something. It
yes.
impacts the food that I get, right?
Oh, without a doubt. That goes back to what you put out in the world comes back to you. So how you show up and what you're putting out there, that is a universal law. It's going to come back to you that way. So again, being conscious when you show up, how are you showing up?
I love
It's
that. So tell me how you got there because being conscious, like we're as we're raised, we're given feedback practically from the cradle that we're not enough. You did this wrong, you did that wrong, grades and friends and betrayals and jobs and failures and all those things sort of beat into us the idea that we're not enough and we have to scramble and live in this sort of fearful way. And you don't fall up the mountain of consciousness, like you don't get there accidentally. So tell me a little bit about,
it's all a deliberate process.
yeah,
Trust
talk a little bit about that. How did you
So,
get a ways up that hill?
I'm seven of 10. I came from a family of 10, with a single parent. My mom and dad weren't together, so she was doing the best she could. But I always felt that I didn't belong there, and it was a very strict religious upbringing, Pentecostal holiness. I mean, they had so many rules and regulations. I didn't understand what they were doing. And they, believed very strictly in the Bible. And, I had questions from a little child. I was always in trouble because I didn't understand what they were talking about. But I had a near-death experience, my first near-death experience at 23. And I was told that, basically the doctors told my family, if you know how to pray, you better pray because there's nothing we can do for her. I had contracted serum hepatitis through some dental work and didn't know it. It took them 6 months to figure that out.
Oh,
By
wow.
the time they figured it out, I was in the third stages of the disease where you just sleep away.
Hmm.
And I remember the minister of the church, the bishop of that church, he looked at me, he said, we've been praying, we've sent to all these different organizations he belonged to, and the red flag, you're out of here, basically, right? But then he looked at me and said, but if you want to live, you have to choose. And I thought to myself, I'm out of here because I don't know the God y'all be talking to, right? So I'm like, I'm out of here. But that, they got me to the hospital. And I think when you think about a mother's love, it's one of the most powerful things in the universe. My mother was there every day from the time visiting hours started till they were closed. And she would come and she would wake me up. She'd keep me, she was holding me to this side. And every night I would dream. And the dreams were so vivid because they were like my life was planned out. All the things that had happened to me while I had it so far. And then one night I didn't dream. And when I woke up the next morning, the strangest thing had happened. I wasn't who I was when I went to sleep. And I knew I wasn't. the sun was coming through the window, and I'm looking at this sun. I was so excited to see it because I'd never seen it before. I knew intellectually, but I'd never seen it before. I looked down, I saw trees. I knew that's a tree. Oh, that's what it looks like. This is what was happening in my mind. And I knew that I was healed. There was no illness in me. But the other strange thing was I had the memories, but it was like I'm looking in someone else's mind because I had no recollection of experiencing that stuff. So I'm looking in someone else's memories. It took me 10 years to find out what that was, what had happened that night. And, but it set me on a path. You said, how did I get here? So that's what set me on this path of awakening. And it didn't happen completely because I went there 2 more times, but I never stopped growing. Took me 10 years to figure out that that was an exchange, which I don't know if you've ever
Tell
heard
me
that.
what you mean. An exchange, what?
A walk-in, an exchange of souls. The soul that was here when I was born chose to leave and agreed to allow a walk-in. And that's why everything was so new, why I didn't understand. Although I quickly adapted, I still had this, what am I doing here?
Do
What
you
is,
feel like I've heard the term walk-in before? Do you feel, and you used the pronoun I just now. So but if you were a different soul from 0 to 23, and that happened at 23 where a second soul came in and walked in to that life and then saw the old memories but
yeah.
didn't have the experience of having experienced them. You use the pronoun I. Did it feel like I or they? I mean, like how did you experience that
No,
ownership?
no. I didn't know what had happened, so I could only use the I
Okay.
because I didn't understand the process. And like I said, it took me 10 years. This book I found had no clue why I'm reading this woman. Her name was Ruth Montgomery, and she had a series of books. One was called The Strangers Among Us. And when I picked up the book and started to read it, I recognized the process. I
Right.
said, this is what
Okay.
happened to me. Now I understand. And what I've been able to really understand about that process, in the exchange, the agreement was that I would finish out whatever the previous soul had committed to before I could begin my process.
Okay.
So it took me a while. And then I think after I was 46 when I had the last near-death experience. I had a gallbladder surgery through a clot and went bad. Sit in my body for 30 days. My
Wow.
lung began to atrophy. Of course, they're thinking this woman's out of here because all it takes is a piece off of that blood clot that's setting in her lung, and she's gone. And there was some amazing things that happened about that. But the message from that was, you don't need to come here again to get what you have. And that sent me on a whole different direction than I had been on. So that told me I was complete with that. And now the downloads became quicker, clearer. I began to understand. People showed up in my life to support what was happening to me, to help me understand what was going on and who I was. And I'm still in question of that, trust me. But my whole life changed.
So let me
Each
ask you a
time my
question
life
about that.
changed.
I believe you. And we've talked before, and I had an experience where I died also. But anyway, tell me, what are the things we use, the language we use is, and then I understand what my life's about, just like what you just said. We say that.
Hmm.
And so this might get to the second part of what you said about adding good to the world. You had these remarkable experiences that helped you see who you really were and that you were what you were about, which is living consciously and making intentional, conscious decisions about what you add
Hmm.
to the world with your thinking and language. And part two was to help wake up or awaken as many other people as you can so that they will do that. Tell me, for the listeners, help me, them understand what you mean by what I'm about, who I am, and helping others wake up. Like, what does that all mean in plain language? So someone listening to this can say, wow, I either have or I want to have a more fulsome understanding or experience about that.
When I say what I'm all about, I begin to understand my purpose,
Mm-hmm.
why that exchange happened.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. And tell
Um,
us
and
why did it
I
happen?
truly, in fact, I'm not going to say I believe, I know every soul that enters this realm has a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But like you were saying earlier, we are, we come in through the birth canal, which I call the river of forgetfulness, and we forget why we came, and so that we can experience this world in a way that we have chosen to experience it. So what happens though is that you said earlier we're influenced by this person, that person, our environment. If you watch a little child, they're learning at lightning speed. They're picking up not just what you're saying, because they don't really listen to that. They're watching what you're doing. They're watching what's happening around them. And so the way our society is set up, it does not support us being the powerful beings that we truly are. So in the process, there are things that'll happen along our lifeline that are meant to help wake us up. But because of the way that our society is built, rather than taking the pearls from what happened and allowing what we call mistakes to become experiences, we either latch onto that and become victims. You
Mm-hmm.
know, oh, this happened to me, blah, 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 blah. So now you're off your path again. Something that happened to someone to come in, maybe you'll have some healing with your trauma or whatever, but you get back on that path. The point is to recognize I came here to experience these emotions or those emotions, however you want to say it. And my purpose here is to help others that have experienced this wake up and realize who they are as powerful beings. Because I believe that we're all much more powerful than we recognize, but we've given that power away based on how our society is set up. Everything in our society tell us that we're victim or that we're weak or we can't do this or we can't do that. You look at TV, listen to the radio, it's always something negative, something bad. You better be afraid of this, you better be afraid of that. So when I say who I am, I've seen through the BS. I've seen through the matrix. I've seen through the illusion. And we all have that ability. And that's what this great awakening is about. Seeing through the illusions that we have created. No
But
one else
why?
came and created this.
I agree. So I want to go there. You said a couple of times about society teaches us this by the way it's structured. Why do you think, and I know you're making this up here because we all are, but why is it structured that way? Why is it that from practically the moment we're born, for nearly everyone, I won't say everybody, but nearly everyone, it is structured or seems to be structured so that it beats the crap out of our
Let
self-confidence.
me just cut through it. Let me cut through it because we decided we're going to create this game that we want to come here and play in, right? And so because we set the rules, because we've forgotten, right? So that we could experience all of this stuff that we've created. Well, what's happening is we're at the end of the game. In fact, 2024 was the end of a 25,000 year cycle. We're coming into a new cycle. That game is over. It's time to wake up. So we're starting to wake up. It's like the earth began to move into a higher dimension, a faster vibrational frequency. So the energy's changed around this planet. We're being affected by that energy. More and more people are waking up. Oh, this doesn't feel right. And people, I'm sure people talk to you all the time and say, I don't know, it, what I used to believe, it just doesn't make sense anymore. This is kind of this ain't right. No, I don't want to do that because the energy of this planet has changed and people are beginning to wake up. We're moving into a new cycle. We can create something different now. But there's nothing out there that's created this. We are the creators and we set it up that way. So yeah, when I say this society, I'm talking about what we did, not what something outside, something, out there. Nothing is orchestrating us. We are orchestrating ourselves. And that's what we have to wake up to and realize. We created this illusion of, this God sitting out there, or this energy out there. No, it's within us. It
What do
is
you
within.
think in this change that's happening now and the new energy? And I agree, it just in terms of language that I hear people using, this yearning to do more, be more, create, take control, that everybody languages it differently, but people are feeling that. What is the new creation? Can you describe, at least to start with, what you think this new creation is that we're being asked, invited, driven to create?
Okay, so the new creation, first of all, starts with recognizing that we're all one, that we're all connected. What I do to you, I do to myself. That illusion is gone. I recognize we're all from the one source. There's one source, and we have created these little pieces of ourselves so that we could experience what we create, which then helps us to expand. But we're all the same thing. Does that make sense?
I understand
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Non-duality is the
So yeah,
interesting way to say that.
yeah,
And maybe some people will understand it and maybe they won't. But I think everybody will understand what you do to someone else, you do to yourself,
right.
because there is essentially unity. So keep going.
So when we begin to understand that we are one, we are all connected, it changes the whole dynamic of how we treat one another, right? Because
Yes.
I'm not going to hurt myself. So if I'm not going to hurt myself, I'm not going to hurt you. It raises the bar of what we create. And so, short, quick version, heaven on earth, period. You ask me what it looked like, what we try to heaven on earth,
Okay.
where the these bodies are avatars. We don't mistreat them because they will regenerate themselves. But it's because of the environment and how we eat and what we do to ourselves that these avatars break down so quickly. Okay, and,
Hmm.
and science is beginning to understand that these bodies can do a lot more than what they thought. You don't put those chemicals that, anything from the pharmaceutical started out natural, but they added chemicals to it. And that's why you see the rise of plant medicine because people are going back to what this earth was meant to support us completely.
I
You
saw
understand?
it. I saw a YouTube video. I didn't look at the video, but the title said, in the 2030s, it's going to be such that we human beings can live forever. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it's an interesting thought about
But
what
when
you're
you
talking
say
about.
forever, as you move into the higher consciousness, you move out of time and space uh,
Hmm.
continuum anyway. There is no time and space. This is something we created for this game. You see what I'm saying?
I
For
do.
this game. So when you say living forever, what's forever? You see?
Well, forever is a construct that we have when we measure time in a linear fashion, and you're saying
Thank
that
you.
goes
Thank
away
you.
because we
Thank
stop
you.
being linear about it all, and we recognize the
Thank you.
sort of spherical or circular nature of all of it.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me
So
about the work that you do now. We started with, what happened and your purpose and how you're adding good to the world and your journey, and you've described not anywhere near all of it, but a number of events that have brought you to this place. So tell me about the work, or I don't even want to call it work,
well,
the
and I'm
choices
not going
that
to
you
call it
make.
that because that's called
Yeah.
play to me. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So I love that,
Yeah.
and thank
So
you.
what I play when I'm playing with people, I am a spiritual architect. And what does an architect do? They lay out the plans to build a new container. So I help the people that I work with build a container so that they can be all that they can be. Because when I say we're powerful, we're so much bigger than these physical bodies. We're so much more when you realize that you are part of everything, that you are one with everything. There's nothing that you cannot do. The only thing that's stopping you is you and your belief. You're limited by your vision. We're limited by our vision, by our imagination.
So if I'm coming to you with uh, a limited or shriveled up vision of my own possibility, but I have this yearning and underlying sense that there could be, should be, is something more, but I don't know how to access it. You're telling me that what you do, you work with me to architect to
We
eliminate the
build
false
that.
boundaries, to eliminate the barriers that I put up, and create a larger space and a larger vision, so I can begin to not only see and pretend, but to experience the possibility of this large vision. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And what I do is when I'm working with someone, I'm listening, not to what you're saying, but what you're not saying, because that's where the key is. We're good at telling our stories, but what is it that you're not saying to me that I need to know, that I need to hear?
Give
That
me
is
an
part of
example.
my gift.
So I love that because you're right. What we say is just a regurgitation of what we've always
Yes.
said and what we've believed and this gobbledygook that we've accepted for however long. And help me and the
So I
listeners
had a
understand what
client,
is the not saying. Yeah.
I had a client that his wife sent him to me because they were having some marital issues, right?
Hmm.
And the first session that we had, he looked at me and he said, "So how long is this going to take?" And I looked at him and said, how long do you want it to take? It's going to take as long as you want it to take. But I began to see in him, because he's telling me, he's confessing all the wrong that he's done, right? But what he's not telling me is the underlining driving energy that's caused that helped him to make those decisions and what he really desired, right? And what he really desired was to be the head of his household, and he didn't feel that way. So he would go out and have affairs with them because they made him feel like king, right?
Hmm.
But he couldn't say that. And I never had to say it to him, but I led him to the place where he could say it. What is going on? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I was able to lead him to that space where he could say to himself, and he could hear himself say it, that that's what he wanted to be, is the tree in which all of his family was covered. But it was only because I'm looking beyond what he's telling me to see what his desire is. Does that make sense to
It
you?
does. He had a desire that wasn't fulfilled, and he was chasing other ways to fulfill it that were causing all
Right.
these problems,
Because he
obviously,
had
in his
never said it to
relationship.
himself. He had never acknowledged what the yearning was. And that's how people often get into these situations that they don't want to be in because they're not willing to be honest with themselves. They're not willing to look within themselves and truly understand what is it that I desire. They're chasing their wants rather than their desires. See, and the desire is something you already have. A want is something that you don't have, and you think, if I keep doing this, I'll get it. No, but when you say, I want this, I want that, I want this, the universe says, okay, Kellen want it, we'll make sure he wants it. But when you say, I desire this because you know this is what you're made of, this is part of you, the universe goes on and says, okay, let me create more of what he is. Let me create more of what he has already.
So the foundation there is the big distinction between a desire, which is consistent with the truth of my eternal nature, and a want,
Yes,
which is an artificial construct,
yes,
maybe created by this game that we're playing,
yes.
or all this sort of thing. And so these artificial wants come on there, and we confuse wants and desires and think if I get enough wants, I'll get the desire. And that's not true because the desire is consistent with
It's
the
already
truth of who
there.
we really are.
Yeah, and you only get more of it when you recognize this is my true desire. Those wants will have you out there chasing all kind of things, doing all kind of things because you're wanting something that's not what you are. And see, what you are is already everything. You don't have to want it. Acknowledge what you are, and all things are possible. We live in an unlimited universe. It's like people say, and I think I want, well, that's not how you create. You create by, I imagine. When you say, I imagine this for myself, that's like the ignition turns on. The universe is now gone to work. It's bringing that imagination because you see it. When you imagine something, think about it. Kids playing, they're imagining their friend, they're imagining this, and it's real. That's how we create. It's like we have to become little children again and use that powerful part of ourselves to imagine our world to be what we desire it to be.
It's fascinating. Often people go talk about how little kids they want without limits. In other words, they can be both the president and a fireman and an astronaut and
Thank
be in all these places at the same time. And the idea of lack and limitation doesn't occur to them. And we learn that limitation as we have these experiences playing this game.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why you have to, I mean, and even think about it. Even the master Yeshua says, unless you become as a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom.
Right.
And the kingdom is heaven on earth. It's a state of consciousness.
So when you work with people, is it like a set of, do you meet with them? Do you meet with them weekly, monthly? Do you
I meet with normally when I do one-on-ones, it's usually a minimum of a year because we got a
uh-huh,
lot of stuff to clean up,
uh-huh,
right? And I
okay.
meet with them once a week and we do it on Zoom. And they have assignments that, I'll give them do this, work on that. Because one of the biggest holes that people have fallen into is not loving themselves. And they talk about, oh yeah, you gotta love yourself, but it's not as simple as that. You got to go in there and undo some stuff
That's a
and
fact. Yeah.
understand who and what you are because you come as pure love. And like you said, all these things that happen in this game pushes you away. You're not good enough. You're not this. You're not that. You got to learn to love yourself unapologetically. It's like, people say if you're selfish, how can you be? Well, there's a selfishness that you have to be in order to love yourself unapologetically. Because if you're not okay, how are you going to help someone else? And
Well, there's
people
a
are doing this
difference
all the
between
time.
Yeah, there's a difference between selfish indulgence and
Right.
truly honoring the infinite being that you are.
There it
You
is.
know, honoring
There
the
it is.
infinite being you are is taking good care of the skin bag, the spirit that's inside, and all of the rest,
Yes.
and exuding and sharing the love and truth that is also them because they are me. So is
Thank
what you're
you.
saying. Yeah,
Thank you. Because people are saying, "Oh, I love you." And how can you give something you don't have?
can't.
If you don't love yourself, you cannot love someone else. I call that situational or conditional love. As
Yeah.
long as you're doing what I say, I love you. When you don't do it, we got a problem. You go into the lack category, okay? And you'll find it with parents and children and husband and wives, and you'll find that going on everywhere. And people are dying from the lack of love, loving themselves first. Because when you love yourself, no, you're not going to allow certain things in your life. And you can do it without any anger or frustration or bitterness. You can do it from a place of love. I set boundary from a place of love. I was in where was I at? I think I was in India, and we were on the bus, and this man comes in, and his wife wanted to sit in the seat where I was, but I had my suitcase there, and I was sitting by the window. So I was trying to tell her to wait, let me get out and let her in, and he starts talking crazy to me. Who? Why you talk to her? Why did? And I just looked at him and said, "Did I give you permission to speak to me?" And I know I did not give you permission to speak to me in this way. And he was like, but see, that was a boundary. You don't get to just speak to me anyway, just because you have a mouth. You don't get
Right.
to use your mouth as a weapon against me. That's not okay. And I have a right to say to you, ho, you're crossing the boundary here. And I don't have to be angry. It just is. People can't do that. A lot of people won't, they have to be angry or they have to be frustrated or they shrink into victim.
Right.
When
Subservient.
you love yourself, you set boundaries.
You do. And you're doing it because you're honoring the truth of your divinity. It's not
Yes.
about pushing you away because I'm
Nope.
better than, or you can't this, that, and the other. And it's also a truth that they could learn. Look at this
Yes.
person honoring their divinity, their divine nature and being,
Right.
setting a boundary for me. Wow. What is that saying about me that I was even violating? I mean, most people aren't going to go that introspective. Tell
No,
me.
not at first, but if they keep talking to me, they'll get there. I
Yeah, I
promise.
believe you. I believe you. And we had a brief chance to talk another day, and I really enjoyed that as well as we got to know each other. So I want people to know how to find you, how to find your programs, and find out more about, like, I don't know if you've got programs, and I know you said
Uh,
you meet with people a certain way, but how do we do
I
that?
actually do. My website is www Esther Jones, one word, alley.com. And it has all of my programs on it. It has my sacred journeys, because I do also do sacred journeys to India, Egypt. Planning to do one this year to Bali. I went last year to kind of scope it out.
Hmm.
Um, and I take people on these journeys so they can feel the energy of these sacred places that is still there. And all of that's on that website. I also am on Facebook under Esther Alley, and I'm on Instagram, Esther Jones-Alley. I'm on LinkedIn, Esther Alley, Esther Jones-Alley. So all these places, I am
Hmm.
there. And welcome to reach out. Welcome to reach out.
What did I not ask you that you're dying for me or others that are watching to know?
Um, I'm not dying for anything, first of
Well,
all.
okay. That you would enjoy or love to have people know or hear.
Well, again, like I said, I go on these sacred journeys. I still have some spots for India. I'm doing India in February, the 24th through March 8th. We're doing all of South India. We'll be going to several cities. We'll be, have a chance to bathe an elephant, uh, spend the night on a riverboat, the whole bit. I'm really excited about it. In 2024, I went to North India, so I want to finish out the continent. There's so much energy there, but a lot of people don't get a chance to experience it. I call India the land of unconditional love. But because they people go there with judgment, with preconceived notions. You see all the propaganda about this country,
Mhm.
and so they never get past that to really feel the unconditional love. That's the secret of India, is unconditional love. And if you can get past all of your judgment and expectation, you will get to experience that power. Um, Egypt is the land of the gods. And when I go there, I get to walk with them. I get to commune with them. They're there, but they vibrate on a different frequency, which is much higher than what we're on. But if you raise your frequency high enough, they'll meet you and speak with you. These are entities that have been there for eons, because remember, they don't die. Okay.
So I love this, and I want to repeat Esther Jones-Alley, ALLEY.com. So take a look and see. I encourage you to do that. Esther, thank you for your presence, and thank you for
Oh,
your
thank you.
laughter, for your
Thank
heart,
you.
and for your true and unvarnished yearning for people to love themselves and
Yes.
therefore create their possibilities.
Yes. Yes. And just be open and willing and more conscious. Start to think before you speak because we're always creating. And what are you creating? What is it that you desire to see in your life? Be conscious. Wake up. So, yeah. Thank you,
Thank you.
Kelly.
So you betcha. I want to encourage all of you listeners, go back and listen. There were lots of pieces here. The focus is just being aware. Start with being aware of what you're creating, because it's not just what you're doing. It's like you're creating. The energy you send out with your language internally and externally is creating, is what we learned today. So
And,
be
and there's
aware
one
of that.
and there's one more piece that is really important. Be willing to take responsibility for what you're creating. Nothing comes into our world unbidden. Nothing shows up that we do not call in on some level. And as you become conscious, you begin to recognize what it is you're calling into your world. So be willing to take the responsibility as well. It's not just being conscious of what you're creating. Be willing to take the responsibility and ask questions. What is this here in my life to serve me? How is this going to serve me? What am I supposed to learn? When something that we call bad happened, go in and pull the pearls from it, because there's some pearls in there that's meant for you to grow from, not to sit down as a victim, but to open up your heart and let it teach you what it's come to teach you. So I wanted to throw that in because it's not enough just to be conscious, but you've got to be willing to take responsibility for everything, not some, everything that shows up in your life because you've called it in.
So I love that. And I actually completely agree. So please do that, listeners. And then think about this. Your ultimate life is a life you create. And if you do this, if you take responsibility and become aware of and create consciously, then you will be able to create your own ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart
Right here, right
and
now.
this
Your
time
opportunity
around.
for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to kellenflukigermedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, yourultimatelife.ca. Subscribe, share.
And your feet on the ground. Stand with your heart.